This is Anthony Pascal.
And this is Laurie Ulster, and this is the All Access Star Trek podcast, the San Diego Comic-Con edition. Basically, there's so much news that just came out of Comic-Con. We're both gearing up for Star Trek Las Vegas, so we are going to cover all the news that we can squeeze in today from Comic-Con, and there's going to be more, and it'll be up on the site, and it'll be up, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, if other things that we missed come up. But let's start with a little Star Trek Starfleet Academy.
Academy, that's the next show. They confirmed it's going to start shooting in August.
They confirmed something else we've been waiting for them to confirm for an awfully long time.
Yeah, the big news was about instructors. They kind of teased things on Friday, announcing Gina Yashiri, who's a British comedian and actress, is going to be one of the instructors. But then in the panel, they're like, there's going to be more instructors. They then said 4 familiar names and characters.
They did indeed. So they said recurring guest stars will be Mary Wiseman, who we've been waiting for that announcement since the show first came onto our radar, and Oded Fehr as Vance are going to be recurring guest stars.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's going to be she's obviously an instructor. He's just kind of the admiral. So even though they framed it as we're talking about instructors, I doubt he's going to be an instructor.
I think they meant adults versus
certainly. And neither are surprising unless you think Mary Wiseman is not a series regular is a surprise.
That was a surprise to me. And then more surprises because they said series regulars will include Tig Notaro as Jet Reno and Robert Picardo as the Doctor.
I think that's a good collection. I mean, I'm surprised about Tig because it was kind of a big deal to get her to Toronto.
Yes.
For Discovery. And maybe she's feeling better now and all that, because that's kind of a commitment to be a series regular.
I think a lot of that also was during COVID, and she is particularly vulnerable. And so I think that all the traveling made her very uncomfortable, but she's been touring. So she must be cool with it now. And it's not like you have to go quarantine for 2 months every time, or 2 weeks, whenever you want to show up there. So I mean, the Doctor's
everyone's talking about Robert Picardo as the Doctor. Big year for him, obviously.
Look at him. My goodness. Like, I always think of John Billingsley talking about how Robert Picardo would pop out of the bushes whenever the writers walked by to say, like, I should sing opera or something like that. But obviously, he's made it known that he wants to be around, and boy, is he around.
He's essentially immortal as a hologram.
And he's a great character.
I wonder if he's going to be an instructor or like the doctor of the school. I'm certain they're going to have him decide to look his age as opposed to do something goofy with that. Will it be that he has existed? He has been online for this long. I kind of like the idea of them finding his program, and he's been like offline for like 600 years. It's like if he's 700 years old or whatever, 800 years old at this point, I don't know. Like, what would that do to a person to be that old? It would change them completely.
Oh, yeah.
And so I like the idea of like maybe in the early 25th century, he got like shut down and then they found him.
That would make sense.
Last week. And so he's still kind of the guy we know.
And then he would be adjusting to the future.
Maybe he teaches ancient history. Maybe he teaches literature. That's the thing. Like, what are they teaching? Do they have subjects? That kind of thing. Because that's the thing. They didn't really reveal anything. Like, for example, they rolled out this video of them, with all of the cadet cast with their Zoom calls when they told them all they had the part.
Had a very sort of reality show vibe to me.
Yeah.
It was a little weird.
But they didn't reveal anything about this cast of cadets. We don't know who's the lead. We kind of have our guesses, but it's entirely unclear. They didn't release any names. We know nothing about these, except that apparently there's one left to cast. They've cast all the kids except for one.
Right.
Or kids, these are 20-somethings.
I know, they're not kids. And then about the cast that they already have, like at the panel that was interesting was Alex was raving about Holly Hunter and said she's going to be a very different kind of captain and chancellor. And then when they talked about Paul Giamatti, they said that they had seen his press where he was speaking Klingon.
I think that, I'm going to go out on a limb and say they saw our coverage. Because we led the Paul Giamatti wants to be in Star Trek coverage.
Right. You saw it. You wrote it up.
Yeah, the guy from Denmark contacted me to tell me about the video, and then we did that article. And Alex described that. I know they watch our site,
Of course they do. So they asked for a meeting with him. They got it right away. They wanted to find out if he was really a Star Trek fan or not, which he was. Apparently he cried during their meeting when they offered him a Star Trek role. And they were thinking, maybe we'll be lucky enough to get him for one episode. And he was like, no, they offered him a bunch of options. And he said he wanted to play the villain of the whole season.
Yeah, because they figured they might get him for a guest spot. One episode kind of thing. And this must have been back right around when he was being talked about as an Academy Award winner. He was a nominee. He's got a lot of heat on him, but he cries when Star Trek reaches out. So I think that's kind of cool.
I feel that. I get it.
What did you think of the comment from Alex when he described the show as a hybrid format?
I have no idea what he means.
Okay, yeah, because he didn't say a hybrid of what? I'm guessing a YA show and a traditional Star Trek show is what he meant.
Well, it's just a show. I've watched many shows that had teenagers and adults, and sometimes the stories were about the teenagers, and sometimes they were about the adults.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. It's like a family show.
Certainly, Giamatti, Picardo, Holly Hunter, the curmudgeons out there are at least becoming Academy curious. I would say.
Yes.
And Tig, obviously, and Mary, and, my Advance is there, I'm there. So I'm excited about that.
And I was very happy about Tilly. I was starting to get worried because so much time had gone by and they hadn't announced her and she was the most obvious one.
During the panel, during the QA sessions, a couple of disabled people had, asked questions about the Star Trek franchise. And Alex said, there will be representation on Starfleet Academy, including a character in a wheelchair with a Starfleet Delta on it. Always good to see more representation. I have a question about whether a wheelchair would have wheels in the 32nd century. Hopefully it hovers.
Yeah, I'm assuming there's something interesting about it. They did have a character in Discovery Season 1.
We saw in just one episode, I think.
He was in a couple.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
The way Alec brought it up, I think this might be a more significant.
Yes, not just a background character.
But we could assume a diverse set of species and, because it's the first class of Starfleet coming back together again. So it'll be exciting.
I think so. I'm looking forward to that one now. I have my curmudgeon moments, but I don't have any about that show anymore.
So speaking of curmudgeon moments.
But here comes my curmudgeonly moment.
So they wrapped up, but we're going to get into it now, the panel with the discussion about the Section 31 movie. Michelle Yeoh wasn't there, but she kind of beamed in with this little video, and then they showed the trailer. Before we talk about what was said at the panel, let's talk about the trailer.
So I'm trying to think of it. I like to try to put a positive spin on things when I can. And I remember the first Star Trek Beyond trailer being like crazy, just looking like, wah, smashy, smashy, here's explosions, blah, blah, blah. And at the time, Simon Pegg was like, no, don't worry about the trailer. That's just marketing. They're just going crazy, putting in the flashiest bits. But that trailer was like, it did not make me excited about the show.
Well, they wanted it to not look like Star Trek, for sure.
Well, they succeeded.
With the Beyonce music and the way it was cut. And, they've made it clear, and this was mentioned in the panel, they're trying for a Guardians of the Galaxy kind of vibe. They're going for something different. I'm fine with that. I guess my question is, I'm just not sure the execution is going to be there. Like, I think a Guardians of the Galaxy spy-fi Star Trek thing can work. Have they succeeded in that? Or is it going to feel like a knockoff of that genre? That's remains to be seen. There definitely were interesting things about it. They're not shying away. So they talk about Giorgio in there. as brutal tyrant who killed lots of people.
No, and I like the idea of seeing her as a child, like as a young woman.
Right. So we're going to
Like a
get
little
her
bit of
origin.
history. Yes,
Yeah.
and played by somebody that my Toronto family knows. Michael Martino.
So I think the setup is this is a few years later, maybe from when we saw her last. She's running a nightclub, and maybe she's being recruited again by Section 31 or something like that. Or maybe she's working undercover. But Rachel Garrett seems to be part of Starfleet, and she's maybe there to like keep an eye on her to make sure she doesn't, kill people randomly.
Sure.
And she puts together this misfit team of weirdos, including Sam Richardson playing a cameloid, which is pretty cool.
That's the same species as Iman in Star Trek VI, for those of you who didn't immediately know what a cameloid was.
One of the guys seems to be a cyborg, but not a Borg. Like he's got some kind of mech suit situation. There's like a Vulcan.
There's a Deltan.
So it's a lot of familiar Star Trek stuff. It's like I want to be open-minded, but I didn't love the trailer either. Yeah,
it's hard. It's obviously I'm going to watch it, and my goal is always to enjoy the Star Treks that I watch, but it doesn't mean that I will. And this one, I have to say, it just if this wasn't Star Trek and I saw that trailer, I would not watch that show.
Well, it's a movie.
Sorry.
I agree. I mean, they're trying to get people who like Guardians of the Galaxy but don't like Star Trek to watch it.
Well, I like Guardians of the Galaxy.
So if that's like a weird Venn diagram, but this is definitely something where they're trying to get to a new audience, I feel like. As Omari said, one of the actors, the guy from Power, he's pretty well known for that show. He said that what Alex and the director Tunde said is they know Star Trek, but they wanted us to make a messy version of Star Trek, but a beautiful mess. That, this idea of playing with the tropes and subverting expectations and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see if that works.
Again, it's not what I like about Star Trek. So,
yeah, because it's going to be action and shooting and stunts and
sort of like excited badassery. Like, look how bad we are, which is my concern.
The question is, where's the hope? Hopefully it's in there, that their missions are for the betterment of the Federation and the galaxy and all that.
Right. But
the Rachel Garrett character is supposed to be the beacon of hope Star Trek, traditional Star Trek character. I think that's her role in this, is to keep them in line, as it were.
Well, we'll see. They're calling it Spy-Fi.
We'll see.
We'll see. But yeah, that trailer didn't win me over. Although I liked the disclaimer at the beginning.
Yeah, that was cute.
That was
a
fun.
little warning from Starfleet Command. Yep. Did we mention the Section 31 is early 2025?
Yeah, it's next year.
Speaking of stretching Star Trek, this was quite the surprise during the panel. So you and I kind of guessed this
I know,
a little bit.
It's sort of cool because we're talking about how Justin Simeon was moderating the panel, and I had said, "Oh, that's a great choice. I know he's a big Star Trek fan, interesting guy." And you pointed out that usually when they have someone do that, they then announce that they're involved in some way, like Tig Notaro and whatever. So all of a sudden, as the Lower Decks panel is wrapping up, Justin tells Tani to stick around while Alex is still sitting there. And they make an announcement, which is that they are developing a live-action Star Trek comedy together.
A workplace comedy. Now, developing is doing a lot of work there. This is not been ordered to a series, but they had some fun with it. They were like pitching these things to Alex, and I think there were some clues in there. I think it's 25th century was mentioned. It's The Office meets Star Trek in the 25th century. There's opportunity there. Tawny Newsome, Alex said that he was really impressed with her on Starfleet Academy, and I think she brought in Justin, and he was open to the pitch. So the question is, will Paramount buy the show?
And they said they're super early in the process.
I didn't go. I sent someone to the event, and I was talking to him afterwards. He's like, he didn't think this was serious. Like some people in the audience didn't know this was real. And I checked with Paramount, and they did tweet about it, but they're like, no, this is, they sent me a thing saying this is real. It has an official log line. which is Federation outsiders serving a gleaming resort planet find out their day-to-day exploits are being broadcast to the entire quadrant. That's straight from CBS. This thing is real. It may or may not happen, but they are officially working on it.
I would watch this pretty happily.
And people are like, why announcing this and not
Legacy?
And I think 3 reasons, perhaps. The simplest one is this would be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, absolutely.
The second is knowing the way Alex thinks, this is stretching Star Trek into someplace new, which he's into. And I think he feels like they've kind of got things covered with Academy and Strange New Worlds for what you can do with the Legacy show. And that Legacy would be something that would come after they're done with Strange New Worlds is kind of what I think he's thinking of.
Maybe. I mean, that's a lot of time passing.
And of course, the other thing is, maybe there's only 2 things, but if there is a third thing, Terry's, he couldn't do
busy.
It now. Yeah. He would make it happen, but it would be, for a while. So
right. He's not going to stop doing the stuff he's doing.
But I'm open to, Lower Decks has proven that you could have fun with Star Trek. Tawny Newsome loves Star Trek. I'm sure it wouldn't do anything to harm the brand.
Yeah, no, and Justin Simien loves Star Trek. Like, it's, he really loves it. Like, he talked about how his show, Dear White People, couldn't have happened without Star Trek, that he learned so much from watching it. And look, I've met the guy and heard him we talked about Star Trek together. Like, he gets it and he loved it. So he's not looking to subvert anything either. And the idea of these 2 working together sounds great to me. I just think it could be really good. I am a huge fan of The Office and Parks and Rec, so they're setting the bar pretty high to compare it to those.
I don't think they made that point. It's more like it's a workplace comedy, and the obvious benchmarks are Parks and Rec and The Office, because those are both Emmy-winning, well regarded.
They also have this element of people speaking to camera. So they are different from workplace comedy.
That's true. And it does sound like there's a documentary-ish element of this for sure. So,
should we shift to Strange New Worlds?
Yes.
I think we should. So, let's talk news and then clip.
Okay. There's really one news thing, which is they confirmed what was obvious because they mentioned him close to the end of the last season, which is Roger Corby is going to be part of the season. And they announced an actor, Cillian O'Sullivan, Irish actor, has been in, you probably recognize him. I remember seeing him in Vikings. He's been in a bunch of things. Good actor. I don't think he'll have the Irish accent though in this, but who knows?
Dr. Roger O'Corby.
They said recurring role. So, I mean, that's the question of, does Chapel leave the ship for a while to go on her? She was accepted into some kind of fellowship with Roger Corby when she rejected the Vulcans, who were jerks. But we see her in the clip and she's on the ship. So she's not leaving for the season. That's for sure.
Right. So I guess we have to talk about the clip now.
Yes. We don't know anything about the episode. They just said, here's a clip from an episode.
Right. Clearly not the first episode.
No.
Given how last season ended.
It's a pretty extended clip because it shows you
5 minutes.
Yeah, it's in the sick bay and then the transporter room and then on the bridge. So pretty much every character is shown. It's the premise is old standard. You're going on a mission. You need a disguise. So Pike and La'an, Pelia, Uhura,
Chapel.
And Chapel are being turned into Vulcans by M'Benga, except it doesn't work for Pelia.
Yeah, actually, M'Benga doesn't do it. Chapel does it. But it's supposedly that same formula that she got when Spock was turned into a human and then she turned him back, which I remember at the time, just like she gives an injection and it just fixes everything. So, or whatever, hypospray. So she does it and they all turn Vulcan, apparently.
Right. I mean, like, well coiffed Vulcans. Their eyebrows are plucked, and
Their hair changes. The whole, like,
the Pike's hair seems to get bigger, like Kid in Place bigger, almost.
yes.
Like, it's way up there. The ears are way out there, and they start acting very, very Vulcan.
Like racist Vulcans, which we're familiar with.
Yeah, and racist to Spock, who's only half Vulcan.
Like, everyone's racist to Spock. The humans are racist to Spock. The Vulcans are racist to Spock.
The whole thing is very broad. They're playing it for laughs.
They are, so I'm hoping that it's just a weird dream Spock has.
Oh, no, I think this is a whole episode where...
No, let me hope.
Where they spend an episode, because they go to the planet, then they come. The joke is they go to the planet. It's supposed to take a long time for them to fix the radiation. You know, they come back immediately because they're all Vulcans and therefore extremely smart and efficient. I mean, this is me being a Star Trek fan. It's like become physically Vulcan does not mean you're smart. Like, and the whole Vulcan attitude and the logic is from years of training. A genetic change would not. I mean, you wouldn't lose your emotions, I don't think.
It does raise some questions, right? Like, so there's Spock, who's always been half human, half Vulcan, which is a different thing entirely. And then you have to think, like, evolution-wise, have the Vulcans worked on themselves so much that they do have a certain mental discipline that's become part of their biology and physiology?
Because they were all peak Vulcan. You know, they were all very good at being Vulcans.
Yes, they were peak Vulcan. But, like, if you put Vulcan kids and human kids in school together, the Vulcan kids are going to way outshine the human kids.
Yeah, but that's after the Vulcan kids have already been trained as Vulcan kids.
Maybe,
you know?
I mean, that is the question. And it is, I'm being generous. But yes, that is the question.
Anyway,
but it doesn't.
This is overthinking it. This is overthinking it.
No, I don't think it's overthinking it at all. But I also think it's got that magic element to it that solution had the first time too. So, and then of course the joke is switching them back doesn't work.
And doesn't work on Pelia. And she makes a joke about how that didn't work on LSD. On her as recently as like last July.
Yes, last July. That was a good joke. And I liked Scotty in the transporter room talking about how pointy their ears were. But
so that's an interesting thing. So Scotty's in the transporter room, which we've seen before, but like, is he now the transporter guy and Pelly is the chief engineer? Like, is that his job? Are we going to see him? Is he basically Chief O'Brien for the season?
He might be.
Yeah, which would be fine, you know. And every once in a while, he has to do some engineering thing. But I'm glad that they're not losing Pelia.
Yeah, me too.
And he becomes the engineer. So it's great that they could use both of them.
Although, here's my little nitpick. It could have just been the editing. But it felt like Scotty was in the transporter room, and then they told number one to beam them from the bridge. They're like, number one, beam us down, or whatever. And she did it.
Yeah.
And I was like, isn't he the one standing there in front of the damn machine?
And there was special. There? She was doing a thing. So who knows?
I don't know what the hell that was.
Because they needed to involve her in the scene and show her on the bridge in the captain's chair.
Yeah, I'm sort of felt like they cut it in. And maybe anyway, doesn't matter. But it did kind of rankle me just a little bit. But this show does go into strange places, and sometimes I like where they go and sometimes I don't.
I mean, I do worry that the show is going to get a little too high on their own supply.
Yes.
And I had this problem with the most recent season of The Bear, where there's like all sorts of episodes where they're doing all sorts of interesting things, but it seems like they're, when a show's just trying too hard to be interesting and buzzy and doing odd episodes.
The Bear also cast a bunch of famous people and threw them in there, and and I like it, but it's a show can definitely get too excited about itself, and it feels
up its
a little
own
bit
backside.
Yes,
perhaps
that's very politely put.
I love a confident show, but not an overconfident show.
Yeah,
but we've just got a clip.
And with no context at all.
But although we're taking big swings and, the best season ever. So we'll see. But
that's their standard description of upcoming seasons.
There really wasn't anything else from the panel except Akiva said a weird thing about how they're trying to maybe turn Subspace Rhapsody into a real stage thing, which.
You could only do that at a very specific Star Trek event.
Yeah, or even, you could do it at Dragon Con and other conventions.
Yeah,
and,
convention.
but you couldn't do that on Broadway or off Broadway.
No.
Or Branson, Missouri. It just wouldn't work, I don't think. There's just not enough of an appetite for that kind of thing.
It's very niche. And I say that as someone who listens to that soundtrack constantly. I was playing it during dinner tonight when I was cooking.
I still think if you're going to do a stage show, the con opera, there was a joke version of that in Robot Chicken. And I remember thinking this would work. I also think the Planet of the Apes thing from The Simpsons would work.
Yes, I totally think. I'm not a fan of opera, but I would love to see that show that was in The Simpsons for Planet of the Apes was great. And I understood why Homer Simpson was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Because I would feel the same way. It was kind of brilliant.
Unfortunately, Troy McClure is not available.
No. Who you may remember from such... sorry. Anyway, let's switch gears and talk Lower Decks.
The easiest thing that happened in San Diego is Lower Decks, right? We got a trailer. We kind of knew that was coming. It was an homage to the Star Trek 6 teaser, which makes sense. They have been kind of doing homages like Star Trek 4 to season 4, but this made sense because it's the final season. So they're jumping to the Star Trek, and it was a beautiful thing that both looked back and looked forward. It was just a ton of fun. The trailer, it's everything we knew it would be and more. I loved every minute of it.
I loved every minute of it. It was a beautifully put together like the trailer alone was beautiful. And then all the clips looked really fun. The clips they chose from previous episodes were great. These sound ups that would come in that were so perfect. They also gave us a date. A concrete actual date, which is Thursday, October 24th. They'll premiere with 2 episodes, and then there'll be 1 a week, and the whole thing will wrap up on December 19th.
Looking at the trailer, it's still episodic, so we could see there's an episode. So there's this overall premise that they've been put on pothole duty, which is these like, interspatial fissures or whatever that they need to clean up. And which is perfect for the Cerritos. And we see they go to one of them and Mariner's bored with it and then comes through an alternate Cerritos with an alternate crew. And she's the captain on that crew. And Rutherford's like a Borg. And that was it. Boimler's got a beard. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, there's so much going on in there that looks, I'm just serve it up.
There's going to be Klingon stuff. And one of the moments, I think they're getting very meta in one episode. There's a moment where they seem to visit a planet that's given up on wealth. They've become a post-scarcity in society, and Boimler's like wearing a T-shirt that says "No money, no problem," and they're lighting money on fire, which seems to be like they're taking on the whole "you don't need money in Star Trek" thing. Right? Obviously, they're taking that head on.
It's a tough one to take on.
Yeah, because obviously there is going to be problems. And they're doing some Klingon stuff, pain sticks,
like an exciting of unending pain or whatever.
Right, Boimler's excited about the unending pain because it's so Klingon.
Because it's so Klingon, which I love. Does show his evolution in his own way. The guy who started the whole series getting stabbed with a bat laugh.
They didn't really give anything away during the panel, but Mike seems to, he's not giving up. He doesn't like describing this as a final season. He's not trying to wrap this thing up. It's just, it ends with this season, and he wants there to be more. And him and Alex were like, when you watch it and watch it again, and maybe there will be more.
Yeah, like Mike said, to be very vocal about your support. And Alex was very specific and said, watch it twice. It really does register. He goes, even if you're not sitting in front of the TV. But, but that's a strong point that he's making, which is, I've done my part for Prodigy. That's for sure. Happy to do it for Lower Decks. It's just such a joy.
There was another piece of good news for Lower Decks at the convention at a separate panel. IDW announced a new Lower Decks comic book, an ongoing comic book. So not a mini series. It's launching on November 12th, so roughly halfway through the season. It's written by the same guy who did the Lower Decks miniseries, who's doing the upcoming Lower Decks interactive novel. He's won an Eisner Award. They're going to have rotating artists for each volume. Sounds great. I think it'll be
sounds
great.
Cool and fun.
Yeah, the last one was really funny. The Shax's Best Day one-off was amazing. So this guy knows the voice of the characters, and so that's going to be pretty cool. And IDW just in general, I think they're firing on all cylinders. They extended their license with Paramount, so more Star Trek to come for years to come.
Yeah, and they're so excited about it too. You'll have to explain this whole Doctor Who thing because I'm still, I still haven't watched it. I did, someone on our post made suggestions for which episodes. I will watch it. I will check it out, but I've got to make my way through some other shows first.
It is kind of what we thought it was. So they weren't there to announce like a real collaboration. It was Alex Kurtzman and Russell T Davies. It was like a summit. But this was official, it was put together by Paramount and the BBC for this International Day of Friendship, which is on July 30th, or Intergalactic, I'm sorry. And they talked about all the shared values of the two franchises, and they're donating money to charity on behalf of the two franchises. They put together this wonderful video with clips from both. Afterwards, both of them said, that was a great video, and it'd be great to see that for real. Maybe fans could make that happen. And Russell T Davies joked about how, and then the lawyers will need to make it happen because it's something like that would be very difficult to do. And then they announced, the Lower Decks connection is that there is a real crossover coming. There's a mobile game for Lower Decks and a mobile game for Doctor Who, which are going to both cross over with each other starting August 1st, where there's a storyline that's going to happen in both games. And these are kind of comedy mobile games. Just watch the video. It was nice. They put together this really cool poster. They did this activation. It was a gallery with props and costumes from both franchises. So that's that.
Well, this wasn't part of the Hall H panel, but there was a Star Trek Prodigy panel that was fun.
It was their own
very
panel.
Fun. And they even did have a concrete announcement, which is that season 2 of Prodigy is already out on digital, so you can buy it. Already doing very well, by the way.
Yeah, I think it's only out in the USA and in Canada, and that's very good news for the Canadians who had no access. This is season 2, and it jumped up to number 1 in Canada on iTunes right away. For all TV, live action and animated. And I think it was like number 6 for a while on iTunes in the USA. I know for sure they're not going to put it out in the Sky Showtime countries until after it's on Sky Showtime, which won't happen until mid-August. And we don't know for the rest of the world when it's going to be on video on demand. It might be available by the time you're hearing this. It might be a long time. Now, the Blu-ray and DVD are coming out. They had a clip of one of the special features with Will Wheaton. You could watch that on the site. And then they had a brief chat.
Yeah.
Well, they showed the episode Mirrors, where, the one you predicted with the reunion. And Kate Mulgrew was there, and she said she cried watching the reunion.
That was her first time seeing it.
Yeah. Kate, it's been on Netflix for 3 weeks.
Yeah,
4 weeks.
I know. She's busy.
But no, it was a nice little panel. The Hagemans talked about how they ended the show. I've never heard them say this. They're like, when they were putting the show together, they're like, what's the worst possible crew you could have? Right. Yeah. And it's basically a bunch of kids who don't know what they're doing. And the show was about them slowly but surely becoming a Starfleet crew. And they said, and there's so much more for them to do, so much more for them to grow. And that, and then Kevin's like, and that's why we want a season 3. I mean, these guys are really chomping for more. We don't know if it's going to happen or not, but they have not given up on that idea.
Yeah. And Kate was like, remember the airplane that flew over Netflix? Can you guys do that again?
I think at this time, Netflix is less interested in seeing things flying over the building and seeing how many clicks there are on the servers inside the building. So don't pay for an airplane. Do what Alex said. Watch the show.
Watch the crap out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what matters.
Which is a very pleasant task, I have to say.
Indeed. I've watched every episode of the season, I'd say 2.5 times on average. Some I've watched 3, 4 times, so
Yeah, I think most for me 3 and some 4 because I was prepping to talk to Kate. So then I was like, oh, I'll just keep it going then and watch some more of it.
I think, upon retrospect, it's good to watch the first 10 and give yourself a break and then watch the next 10 and still give yourself a break in between non-two-parters. Spread it out. Enjoy yourself.
Sure. Or just keep starting it all over again. Like the way my kids used to watch. Granted, there was a lot more of it, but The Office used to be in heavy rotation in our house. And when they got to the end, they would literally just go right back to the first episode.
So the other exciting Prodigy thing is you talked to Kate Mulgrew like an hour ago or something. It's amazing.
A couple hours ago. So we'll play. Here's the funny thing is, and I'm just going to, somehow she got the idea my name was Gloria. And so because it was such a short interview, I knew we only had 15 minutes. I just didn't want to correct her because I just thought it'll turn into it'll waste precious Prodigy seconds. So sometimes she calls me Gloria. It's okay. You can call me Gloria if it makes you happy. I'm usually very fussy about my name, but it's Kate. She can do whatever she wants. Anyway, we're going to play a little bit of the interview. I asked her if that there had been some talk of live action Janeway coming back, and did she think that was something that might happen?
I just had dinner with Alex Kurtzman the other night. We talked about this. It would have to be impeccable. It would have to be without hubris. It would have to be authentic. And it would have to be so bloody good that I would in no way question any element of it. I mean, to come back after 25 years into a character that was once, I'm not only revered, but by me, loved by me. I have to take care of my characters. So I just said to Alex, I love her. She will never be misused, but she must be exalted. And the writing has to be somewhere from heaven. So we'll keep this conversation alive. But so far, it's a conversation.
So I was pretty hopeful after hearing that. And then later when we were talking, I remembered, I said to her that that the first time I'd asked her about it a few years ago, about playing Janeway again, she said she wasn't interested. I think the phrase was, it's nothing I've entertained. Maybe I interviewed her a year or two later, and then she said, it would be delicious to play Janeway again. So I asked her if when she said that, was she being coy and were things already underway? And she was not.
I'm not coy. I change. But I will say this to you. What has been a little challenging for me is my great respect for the original live action Janeway. Yeah. And what I did to make her as complete as I hope she was. So I'm entitled, I think, to that sense of protectiveness of that character. And yet, in my mind, is still the longing to revisit her. So over time, things change, and they will change again. I can assure you of that.
I in no way would be surprised to see live action Janeway again. Alex brought up how they want to do more of these movies. The Star Trek streaming movies. I think that would be the most likely thing. I don't think a series, maybe a miniseries, a Janeway miniseries set after Prodigy. I mean, that's a question of when do you set it? That's an interesting time when Janeway comes back and she's kind of pissed at Jellicoe, and there might be some interesting Starfleet tensions we can get into during that period.
Oh yeah, I mean they set that up beautifully. That she was angry about the way things were going.
Yeah, I'd love to see her and Ronnie Cox really go at it.
Yeah,
and Patrick Stewart could show up, who's retired at that point because he quit.
And he'd be agreeing with Janeway all the way. She'd go to him and he'd be like, I just quit. I'm making wine.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but I'm not hearing anything from her that sounds concrete.
No, she was pretty clear that it wasn't concrete, that it's just discussions, but that there are discussions. But that's all.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that she's open to it, though. And it's not just that vanity of like, oh, I'm open to being the star of something. But it was, she's truly come to love that character. And it's been fun, I think, to see a lot of the different Star Trek actors, because there always have been issues with typecasting for them. And then you see them coming back and just embracing it and loving the chance to play some of these characters, even in a more sophisticated way than they got to before. Like in the case of the Picard actors, for sure.
I mean, another way they could go is they pair her up with Jerry and they do something with the two of them. I think that could be interesting. I don't know if either of them as actors would want to do that, but I think that would be an interesting story potential. Well,
you'll hear when we have the full interview, you'll hear what happens when I made the grave mistake of saying, would you have to be the lead?
Okay. I haven't listened to the full thing. It's fresh. This is a fresh interview. Fresh.
Yeah, it's very fresh. It is hot off the presses. And I squeezed as many seconds out of her as I could get.
So that's it for our Comic-Con breakdown. When you hear this, Laura and I will already be in Vegas, enjoying ourselves, eating, drinking.
Stressing out a little bit.
Not gambling, probably, but otherwise having a good time.
Frantically trying to decide which panels to go to. I was making a list today, and I have so many that are at the same time. I don't even know what to do, including I want to go to things that are happening when I'm in panels.
Laurie couldn't make it to her panel because she's watching another panel.
She went to see somebody else.
So if you're listening to this from Las Vegas, try to find us and say hi. And we'll be back next week with our full Vegas breakdown. Maybe we'll have a guest, one of our Trek movie friends.
I hope we do. I hope we can, because that'd be great. I think it's going to be a really different kind of Star Trek Las Vegas this year. I'm hardly a veteran. I've only been going for a few years, but there's just an unprecedented, in my experience, level of directors and writers and backstage people and interesting ideas and retrospectives and things like that. So,
yeah, it'll be different than like Comic-Con, as we've just been discussing. Everything was about they announced this thing and they put out this video and yada, yada, yada. All that's pretty cool. They don't do that in Vegas. It's not a licensed show anymore. But what we'll get in Vegas is, Brandon Braga talking about Generations. And so it's going to be a whole, different level of stuff to discuss.
I think that particular one is one of my clashes too, where I'm supposed to be somewhere else.
Oh no!
It's killing me. I know, it's heartbreaking. So, and also keep in mind, last year they couldn't talk about Star Trek.
Yeah, let's not talk about when they kept on saying let's not talk about it.
Yes, we're going to talk about it like crazy.
All right. Thank you for listening, and hopefully we see you in Vegas.
See ya.